Welcome to Commissioner's Corner. I'm Commissioner Charlotte Garrido, and today I'd like to talk about volunteers because they mean so much to county government. They are so fundamental to the work that we do. Volunteers are not only a valuable resource for Kitsap County, they also extend the service level that we're able to offer. They contribute to the cost effectiveness of county government. They bring their energy, their skills, and their time to our government. And their generous contributions enrich our entire community. Many opportunities exist for volunteers in Kitsap County, and we hope those who share their talents feel they benefit from their experience as much as we do, because we sure appreciate them. Last year, we had nearly 5,000 volunteers working with Kitsap County government. They contributed 200,000 hours of their time. And we figure at an hourly basis that that's probably a value of about $4.5 million given to Kitsap County by the citizens of Kitsap County. I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the volunteer opportunities, and there are plenty of them. So for example, our Parks and Fairgrounds uses probably about 30,000 of those hours. And people volunteer their talents to be able to help with some of the planning activities that we have. We have stewardship groups who make our parks better, maintaining landscapes, removing scotch broom, cleaning up vandalism. And we actually had a little extra help this year from the USS Stennis and the Ronald Reagan. And you might have noticed that hundreds of volunteers help create the haunted fairgrounds and also work for the county fair, work to help put the county fair together. Our Department of Emergency Management uses more than 500 volunteers. They train for, respond to, and educate the public about natural disasters in Kitsap County. They conduct search and rescue activities, and they staff our warming shelters in the wintertime. 122 people participate in our Adopt the Road program, cleaning up roadside trash and taking pride in their neighborhoods. In Human Services, we have lots of volunteers. Some advocate for seniors in assisted living, mentor children and youth, or spend hundreds of hours as interns at our Kitsap Recovery Center. Our Sheriff's Department has opportunities such as citizens on patrol, community resource officers, and reserves and cadets that interact with and educate the public and assist with traffic control. They do vacation checks, and they serve as extra sets of eyes and ears for law enforcement throughout the community. Volunteers also provide recovery services and counseling to those who are incarcerated in Kitsap County's jail. Over at WSU Extension, they have nearly 1,000 volunteers who give some 70,000 hours each year in Kitsap County. And they serve as master gardeners, as stream stewards, beach watchers, 4-H'ers, rain garden mentors, beach naturalists, and native plant advisors. And in the juvenile department, volunteers serve as youth mentors and court-appointed special advocates, that's CASA, and probation assistants. And I could go on and on. In public works, we have solid waste and surface water opportunities, we have energy efficiency, and much, much more. But rather than continuing with that long list, today I wanted to introduce 3 volunteers to you so that you can get to know them a little bit more and what they do as volunteers and what they like about what they're doing as volunteers. And some of the value that each one of them demonstrates as valuable public service to Kitsap County, and hear the pride in their voices as they talk about what they do. So I'd like to my far right to introduce to you Jim Derry, who is with the Manchester Community Advisory Committee. Next to him is Bernie Hensey, who has been involved with the Banner Forest Watch Group, and Carolyn Lancaster, who is a CASA volunteer, that is court-appointed special advocate. So let's start this off with just a little question. Why do you volunteer, Jim?
Short version.
Mm-hmm.
My wife thought I needed something to do. Long version. My neighbors asked me to represent our neighborhood in a land use dispute before the commissioners. And so I got started.
Okay.
And from there, it kept growing.
And I see you a lot as a volunteer.
You see me a lot, yes, from not only with Manchester CAC, but also with the Stormwater Board. I sit on the County Stormwater Board.
Yes, you do. Bernie, why do you volunteer?
Well, I've been volunteering for many years in various areas that interest me, and I think that's probably my motivation, is that I can get personally involved with causes and organizations that are very important to me. So that's basically why I volunteer.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Well, the short version is that there is such a great need for CASAs in every jurisdiction, not just Kitsap. The long version is I knew when I retired I would need to do something that used my skill set, and that was one of the reasons that I chose to work with children who are in foster care. So.
Great, thank you. Thank each of you. Could you tell us, each of you, tell us just a little about what your group actually does and how it's made, who else is on the group, etc.?
Shall I start?
Please do.
Okay. The Manchester CAC is a citizens advisory committee. I guess we now work directly for you. We
Well,
used to work for DCD, but I think now we work directly for you. There are 16 of us when we're at full strength. We try to bridge the county and the population of Manchester. We're supposed to be a liaison between them. So we feed up to the commissioners, the Board of Commissioners, what the concerns are locally, and then we bring back what some of the things that the county needs to do in our area. And we're something like 2.5 square miles and 2,000 households. So it's a fairly tight little community, and we have 5 representatives from each of the neighborhoods, and then most all the other organizations in the town are represented. It's not really a town, it's a Lammert. It's a limited area of more rural intensive development, okay, and protected. So that's our function.
So what are some of the other groups that are represented on the group?
A Port Advisory Committee, but I think they disbanded, and I'm not sure why. But the ones that are active, Public Safety and Traffic, that group, Historical Society, the Manchester Community Association, and we do educational programs for the town.
So there are quite a few active groups already.
And then also, I don't want to forget them, the Friends of the Manchester Library, because they own the library building and they maintain it and they do fundraisers every year. So, and that's a fairly large group.
The fundraiser, like the salmon bake?
The salmon bake is one they do, yes. They do plant sales. There's quite a bit.
So the reason that I was actually asked by the community to put together a Manchester Community Advisory Committee was to unify the groups and neighborhoods that exist to kind of coordinate community interests and coordinate then with the county to work together.
For the most part, that's working.
Good. So
Okay.
what is the work plan for 2013? What are you working on?
Well, we're getting better at that. We started off with about 50 things to do, and we
In
cut
12
it down to
months.
4 over the last 4 or 5 years. First is to improve community outreach, so that we're getting way to reach all the households, and that's more difficult than you might think. The second one is to build our stormwater park, because Manchester has a massive stormwater problem, because we're a kind of a cup on a hillside. All the water runs down into the sound, and it's the standard things, the standard pollutants, and then some that aren't very standard you don't think about, like in things created by humans, and not just pesticides and herbicides. Second one or third one is a trails program, and we're working on trying to get that going now, working with the county. And the last one is the the last one is the sewer program. and a lot of Manchester does not have sewer, it has septic systems, and that water has to go somewhere eventually,
Sure.
and it goes to the sound eventually. So we're trying to clean all that up. So those are the main projects. The one that's the farthest along is probably the stormwater. That one is now moving into the design phases,
Yes, it is.
and that will be have a major impact on us.
Well, it sounds very ambitious.
Well, it sounds more doable than the 50 things we had.
Yeah, but it's a very hard-working
Yes.
group, too.
It is a hard-working group.
Thank you. Bernie, what are you working on, and what's your group like?
Well, the original group for the Banner Forest County Park was called the Banner Forest Watch Group. We just sunsetted, actually, after 2 years of working together, and we have 12 members, I believe, and in that group are representatives that were appointed to represent different areas of users who utilize Banner Forest, which is a 1 square mile area of forested wetland. It's a lovely place. It has about 17 miles of trails, I think, or more even at this point. Bicycles are ridden in there, people on horseback, runners and hikers, and people just want to get away and get some solitude. So we were tasked with the job of trying to determine what the current conditions are in the park, and then making recommendations for future plans and for what we should do to make sure that the park is preserved in perpetuity according to the original management plan for the park, which was established, I think, in 2002.
So Banner Forest was purchased as a park, a 640-acre section of land in Kitsap County in the year 2000.
Okay.
It took 2 years to put the first plan together, and it seemed to need just a little bit of tweaking, and so a watch group was appointed from the various user groups to help look at what long-term stewardship would look like.
Correct. That's how I see it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
It's been very interesting, a lot of fun.
Good. And so were there some subcommittee working?
Yes, there were
Projects?
subcommittees. How did you guess? I was on the education subcommittee. We had a subcommittee for habitat, and there was a subcommittee for trails. And obviously we all worked together. It was very integrated. And many of us were on more than one subcommittee at a time because our group was so small, 12 members. So in the end, we did some public outreach before our group sunsetted, and I think it was right here in this room, and we had some input from the public and listened to them and gave them some information because they were curious to know what has been happening over the last 2 years. So based on that, we're hoping, right now we're waiting for our, I guess you would call it an updated management plan for Banner Forest to be approved by the county commissioners. And while we're waiting for approval, rather than just let things slide and perhaps go back to a situation that was not very much in tune with the original plan, we have, under Charlotte's guidance, we're putting together an interim stewardship committee composed of a few members from the existing or the previous watch group that I was a part of. And we're charged with a lot of different things, but basically to set something up, I think, to give some information and guidance to the permanent stewardship committee, which will be formed presumably by public volunteers who we'd really like to get a lot of input from them and from the public and people who are interested in volunteering and being part of a stewardship committee to keep things going the way they should be going and to keep an eye on what's happening there.
Right. So you're a little bit modest about some of the terrific efforts of the group. I know that you were out in the park with other volunteers doing surveys of users and what some of their interests were.
Right.
And I know that there was a trails group that went out on many Saturdays walking and taking pictures and putting together reports of what was being seen in Banner Forest, and so that better, more concise recommendations could be made.
Exactly. That's true.
So kudos to that group.
Thank you.
So Carolyn, you're a CASA
CASA.
volunteer, so you don't really work in a group in the same way that these two do.
Not, no, not in a group of citizen volunteers. CASA was formed actually in Seattle area about 35 years ago or so. Got started with one of the judges who was a family court judge and was said he was, losing sleep over making decisions about children's futures in family court when there wasn't anybody that actually had the child's viewpoint in mind. And now the program has grown so that there are some close to 80,000 different CASA units across the country. They're in every state. And I think Kitsap's is a very active one. I'm very pleased to be a part of it. What we do is when a child has been brought to the attention of the Department of Children's Services, then for the possibility of neglect or abuse, then that's investigated. And if it becomes a dependency in court, in other words, if the state takes custody of the child so that the parents have an opportunity to, over a couple of years span of time, have an opportunity to remediate their deficiencies, is the way it's often put, then the family reunification can happen. So there are attorneys involved that we work with, usually an attorney for the mom, an attorney for the dad. The child, if old enough, can have an attorney of his or her own. I work with the guardian ad litem's office, which manages the CASA program through the juvenile court here in Kitsap, and with social workers and, just whoever gets involved in helping to make a child's life better than it has been in the past if there is an issue with the family. So the work is with other CASAs only when we get together for, we'll have a monthly or bi-monthly work session where we can bring up issues that we have with certain cases, and we can talk with one or more of the professional guardians ad litem through the court and then help each other kind of problem solve with that. We also have about bi-monthly in-service things. We're required by statute to have, I believe it's something like 12 to 15 hours, and most of us, of communities, of continuing education within it to keep up with changes in the law and so forth. And so we work together in that way, but it's pretty much an individual job going out into the field to meet with the children and the families and so forth, get them to trust us.
So
Sometimes
do you
works.
work with one child at a time?
Depends
or-
on how many there are in the family. But I'll work with however many there are in the family, and I might have as many as 3 cases at a time. Right now I'm down to 2, because one of them is a little bit more complicated and not quite done yet. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Really,
you.
really interesting. So I'm going to ask each of you how you think that your volunteer effort coordinates with Kitsap County. How do you think it affects Kitsap County government and Kitsap County community?
You want to start with me again?
You're on
Okay,
it.
fine. When you see a lot of me because we work really directly with the county government. So particularly on the stormwater issue now. But now as we move toward the trails program, then we'll be working more directly with the county there. And I don't know that there's not much that we do that isn't part of county government. I would be hard pressed to think what the CAC does. So sewers, same thing. It's really coordinated tightly with the county government. I spend a lot of time talking to Chris May on stormwater. So that, I don't know, I don't know what else to say about that one. It's critical to us.
It's critical to you, but how does the citizen voice help shape for the county decisions? How do you think that happens, and what's the value to you and to us?
That, I think, that's an evolving process, because I'm not sure that, I don't know how long the county has been experienced working with citizen groups, and I know we're not very experienced in working with the county, so I see that evolving, but I see it as a rather steep learning curve, and we're learning pretty fast. What the county's benefit is, at least from my perspective, is that they get a chance to for feedback, and then sometimes the county makes decisions that affect the community, and often they do, and sometimes it doesn't matter what the decision is. Somebody's not going to like it, but at least when you have that constant exchange of information between the county and the community, that tends to mitigate, to hold down some of this. It addresses the questions, makes us feel less like we are simply victims, and more partners.
And that's the way it should be, isn't it?
That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
And we're getting better at it. And the units of the county that I've worked with, and that's stormwater, ecology, the health department, the public works, all of those units have been very, very receptive. So we're pleased about that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You've got a good county.
Yes, and good active citizens.
Yes.
Okay, as far as Banner Forest is concerned, Banner Forest is a Kitsap County park. So the park department, or the Department of Parks and Recreation in Kitsap, is really charged with making sure that the park is managed in the way that it is supposed to be managed for that particular park. So, for instance, once the management plan has been adopted, there's certain guidelines and outlines of what sort of behavior can take place in the park, how things can be treated, how citizens, can report things to the county. And the way I see it is, once we get the stewardship committee going, we will be like a boots on the ground group of people who can report back to the Parks Department. If we need help, we can ask them for it. In return, we can help them, repair trails, clean litter up, that sort of thing. Make sure that nothing is going on in the park that shouldn't be going on. And so to me, it looks like a good situation for both groups, and we support each other in that case.
So it really actually helps citizens and the county have a common view of what the expected future of Banner Forest is as a park as well.
Right, that's how I see it.
Thank you.
Well, I think any community is only as healthy as its children are, and its vulnerable citizens. So the way we make a difference as CASAs in Kitsap County is the same way it would make a difference in any setting, and particularly I know this one, and that is that when children are in a situation where they have been removed from their homes and placed in foster care, they often have to change schools. One of the things that happens very frequently is that there will be a turnover of professionals in there, a turnover of social workers. Sometimes children are moved far enough away from the parents that visitation has to be really engineered. And national statistics have shown that foster kids have much, much better outcomes when they have a volunteer CASA there, because the CASA's job is to stay literally, laser focused on what is the best interest of that child, despite the other people who may be fighting about one thing or another, who's going to have custody, or whose attorney has the better argument or whatever. But the focus is on the children. So it makes a difference in this county and in every jurisdiction where children can be helped to be stronger and to grow up to have a skill set that they can manage to have a healthy life and a productive one and a happy one. So
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's such a valuable contribution to our families and our community.
we think it is too. Yeah.
Well, our time is running short, so I want a sentence from each of you. What is your favorite part of being a volunteer?
Oh my goodness. It's hard to say. I think for me, it's the satisfaction of knowing that so far, at least, all of the cases I've been involved with have come to a happy outcome for the children involved. Whether they've gone back to a more healthy family or whether they've been adopted into a wonderful circumstance, so far that's what it is. And that's probably the thing that keeps me moving in this.
Good for
They're
you.
great little kids I've had
Thank you.
work with. Thanks.
I guess for me, it's been working with other people who share the same values as I have, and also understanding where people who have different interests are coming from and how we can all work together and still have a
Great.
good group.
Thank you.
It's seeing things get done. I'm task oriented.
Yes, you are, and you're good at it.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you've enjoyed hearing from our volunteers as much as I have. And just think, this is 3 of 5,000 volunteers that we have in Kitsap County. Thank you each for being here. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
all you do.
You're definitely welcome.
And you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.